you have to be extraordinary to get extraordinary results. My guest today is Jill Roberts. She calls herself the average Jill. I don't know if I believe her, but I love her website. Right at the front, she says, extraordinary things come from average people. And I'm here to just ask her questions like, what is this about? It intrigues me. So my guest today is Jill Roberts. Jill, thanks for being on the broadcast.
Hi, Greg. Thank you for having me on.
So as Synchronicity would have it, a couple years ago, I was at a fair. You were there. You had some products. You had some T-shirts. You had some prints. You had some granola. I actually tasted it. I kept your business card, and I reached out, a couple weeks, ago. And here we are talking about this. And I love your tagline here. I love the philosophy. And I'm curious. I'm absolutely curious, like how you came up with this. Did you go to Madison Avenue to come up with this? Did you come up with this? Extraordinary things come from ordinary people.
All right. Well, I don't consider myself an expert at anything only because my hands are in so many things. It's kind of how my mind works. But I like when I can inspire someone else to kind of take off from what I'm doing. Like, so often sometimes it takes somebody to look at what somebody else is doing and say, I could do better than that. And if that's what I can do for somebody, then that's just as good as me doing it myself.
Okay, so what I hear you saying is competition is not necessarily in your mindset or your vocabulary. You look at it as a collaborative thing or teamwork. Am I right?
100%. Inspiring people, inspiring others, and also being able to share the passion and excitement that I get through things. And if that can be contagious onto other people, then that's a wonderful thing.
Wow. I love it. Now, people don't spend 10 hours on websites. I don't even think they spend 10 minutes on websites. They might spend 10 seconds, you know what I mean? So what I love about your website, which is anaveragejill.com, is right at the top, it kind of makes you curious, like, what are you all about? And then if you scroll down to the bottom, it says, an average Jill is here to inspire, teach, and offer a positive perspective through writing, video documentaries, and photograph. So that pretty much sums up what you're doing, right?
Yes, yeah, I would definitely say so. I mean, I kind of go through life with rose-colored glasses on, I guess you can say, and if I can share that perspective of looking at things is not, looking at circumstances in general is not being either positive or negative, but just being a circumstance that you just have to walk through and take it as it comes is sort of, especially in the times that we're in today, so many people are looking at life as being gloomy, and there's parts of it that are certainly, but if that's what you stay focused on, that's what is going to manifest in your life. So, it was to look at everyone's perspective on 2020 and how everyone just kind of wrote it off as being a bad year, but there was good things, at least for me personally, that happened in 2020. Not all life is bad.
Right. Yeah, I was listening to J.P. Spears. I guess he was doing an interview. I guess this was like a couple months ago, and he said, you know what, there's two choices, really two choices. One is you can crawl up in a fetal position and be afraid and really just think, the world's coming to an end. Or you can use this to your advantage. Like, what can you learn from this? Maybe you can't go to the movies. Maybe you can't go to the concert. Maybe those things aren't important. Maybe you have to dig deeper. I tell you, I was coming home about 4-ish this afternoon from Hartford,
yep.
And I thought I was going to get a sunburn here in Connecticut. It was beautiful out, and I thought to myself, you know what? The days are getting longer. The sun is shining. I love the fact that you mentioned the word focus because, yeah, if you want to look at what's wrong, you're always going to find it.
Yes.
So tell me about your background. Are you really a right-brain person? Because I'm a little confused here. I'm looking at these beautiful photos. I don't think of that I'm looking at an accountant. It seems like you have an accountant background, person that loves numbers.
Yeah, I have an extensive accounting background. I'm a graduate from Central Connecticut State University. I graduated with an accounting degree. I worked for the state of Connecticut Auditors of Public Accounts for 16 years, so our agency was responsible for auditing other state agencies for state and federal compliance. And then I left the state in 2012, and I took on a position at Winvian Farm in Morris, Connecticut. It's a five-star Relais and Chateau resort. And I managed the accounting department up until 2017 when I decided that I wanted to pursue my writing and my journaling and kind of see where it would take me. And that's the journey that I remain on today.
Wow. That takes a lot of courage. And I want to talk about that in a minute, but I guess what I'm confused about, when I think of an accountant, I think it's somebody that just loves numbers, not necessarily people or the adventure or the metaphysical aspects of life. They're very logical. They're very, just stoic. 1 + 1 is 2,
Yes.
Is it that you weren't happy, or did your mom and dad force you into it?
No, I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was younger, and accounting was something that just came very naturally to me, so I kind of just was directed down this path. But I made it very much, numbers tell a story, so I always looked at it, from that perspective. And when I was an auditor, it was a neat way to use my mind, because certainly when you're auditing for the risk of fraud, you have to be able to look ahead and construct all of the types of variables that could happen in a situation that could lead to misappropriation of funds or something like that. So it really uses your brain like the same way you would use it in a game of chess, where you're trying to look at all the different. So that, from that angle, I enjoyed what I did, and I still today continue to use my mind that way when I'm looking ahead to try to see how, what's the consequence of what I do here? How will that affect down the road? And when I left the state and I went to the private sector, that was just then I could really look at how numbers, analyzing how numbers told a story, and my love of writing came out in, surprisingly, when I'd have to put a narrative to my profit and loss statements, it was like, the best part of my job, because I got to write, and that's what interpreting numbers is like interpreting life in many ways, and just converting that to words. So I always carried, there's a piece of me, and there's a piece of my creative style that I carried even when I was an accountant.
I love it, because, in my mind, I just want to classify, okay, he's an accountant, she's an accountant, left brain, numbers, not creative. And I had a woman on my show, I can't remember, it was years ago, and she talked about, Leonardo da Vinci and how he used numbers, but he also used creativity and how he saw numbers in nature. And I love this idea of a story, because you said it, numbers tell a story. Now, I won't go down this whole election thing and fraud and numbers and all this, but when it comes to numbers and finances, you probably see patterns. There's only so many ways you can cheat, right?
100%. You see it in numbers. I see it as an accountant in patterns that are in life, which carry over into my ability to read circumstances and to understand people and to relate to people, because I can read the story through the patterns and make interpretations. So I use it in all facets of my life.
Wow. Now, you're not introducing yourself and getting to know somebody and asking them to look at the checking account book. So what do you mean that you know how to read them using numbers? I'm curious about that. What do you mean?
Well, not read them using numbers, but just in patterns of things and how they and I don't even do it consciously. I think it's very subconsciously how I pick up patterns in people, and sometimes it can give me warning. It can make me put up if I think that something might not be going the way it should be going, it might alert me to something, or in some ways it might allow me to trust someone that hasn't really given me a lot of time to know, but I can just kind of get a sense whether or not there's somebody that is trustworthy. And I think that all comes from the patterns that I can develop and see.
Well, I mean, think about it. You know, you're also doing the hiking and you're out on trips. You're with people. You're not with people. Anybody that's going out in the woods, you have to be really aware of your surroundings. You see a bobcat, you see a deer, you see a skunk, right? You have to be aware of what's going on in the natural world. So say a little bit about this hiking. I love this idea of going hiking and taking people out in nature.
Yes, I do guided hikes through Flanders Nature Center in Woodbury, but mostly most of my hiking is solo hiking. I do a lot of hiking in the northwest corner. It's one of my favorite things to do, to get out. I'll get out with my camera, but it is my space to really, ground myself, and it's when I focus. It's when I can focus, and it's when I can kind of pull together the chaos in my week and make sense of it. So it's being outdoors in nature just spills over into everything I do. If you've gone to my website, my photography comes from that. My videos on my YouTube channel come from my hiking experiences. And being able to take, people out and share that experience. I know one of the hikes that I do at Flanders is seeing the beauty of nature, or taking patterns in nature and applying them to how we can handle life. Something I write about on my website blog was just, watching the flow of water when you're watching a river, and it doesn't, as it glides over the rocks, it doesn't try to go through the rocks. It gracefully goes around it or over it. And if we apply that to how we can approach circumstances in our life, if we don't apply resistance to them, but rather we can just gracefully move around them or go over them, it can make circumstances in life a little easier to navigate.
Absolutely. And I think one of the biggest challenge for the modern society is we're just walking around on concrete all the time. We don't, I live near White Memorial Park. It's right near me, behind me. I'm not saying I walk out and look at the stars every night, but I do occasionally. It's just that I think we're so disconnected from nature. Like for me, right after October 31st, we're going into a period of darkness. It's November, it's dark. December, it's dark. Now we're going the other way. And I'm a little more aware of that now than I was maybe 20 years ago. And for me, it gives me, I don't know, I feel like I'm grounded more, like I'm in tune with nature more. I'm not saying I'm hugging trees, don't get me wrong, and I'm not against it. It's just that I think our society, especially with social media and Zoom and all this stuff, that we're so disconnected from what's going on in nature that we forget we're part of it. Yeah.
And also taking the seasons, like a lot of people, especially here in New England, you mentioned about the days getting shorter, and this goes back to our earlier conversation about how our perceptions of seeing the good or seeing the bad. I think I actually heard on one of your podcasts about the change of seasons and how that can correspond to how we cycle in our own life. And, I look at this time of year where there's more darkness. This is like my time to hunker down and be a little more creative, and, you're not outside as much or spending as much time because it does darken early. But if you look at all the good that can come out of this season, and it's the same way, nature, there's the change in seasons in nature. I mean, it's necessary for those leaves to fall in the fall, and they add compost to the ground, and then that allows the new blossom in the spring. And so if we look at our own life that way, you can take advantage of this time of year to sort of be a rebirth when you plant your seeds for your harvest in the fall.
Exactly. Why resist? I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love to leave right after Christmas and come back, say, St. Patrick's Day, from Florida or something like that. But there's something to be gained from knowing about the seasons, being in harmony with them, and also realizing psychologically, like, people could be going through a winter in the middle of July, financially or relationship-wise, and just realize it doesn't last forever. So we're going to take a quick commercial, but before we do that, Jill Roberts, give us, how do we get a hold of you? Like, I know you're everywhere. You got a website, you got a blog, Facebook, YouTube. How do people get a hold of you? Because I'm sure they're going to want to connect with you.
Well, at averagejill.com, they can message me through there, and I'm on Facebook at An Average Jill. They can send me a message through there as well. And I'm also, every other week, I am at the Litchfield Community Center where I do the farmers market throughout the winter. So I won't be there next week, the week after.
Excellent, excellent. All right, we're going to be back in 34 seconds. We got a new commercial. Hold on tight.
You've been listening to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show, brought to you by motivational speaker Greg Dwyer on buildingfortunesradio.com. Do you wish you could sharpen your focus on what matters most to you and achieve more? Then you owe it to yourself to read Greg's ebook at gregdwyerebook.com. That's www.gregdwyerebook.com. Download it today and give it away. As always, we want to thank you for listening to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show on Building Fortunes Radio with motivational speaker Greg Dwyer. Now back to our show. Take it away, Greg.
All right, we are with Jill Roberts. We're talking about being average, getting extraordinary results. I don't know if I really buy this. I think Jill, you're not average. You're doing so many things. You inspire me. You got the left brain, right thing going on. You're creative. You love nature. You love patterns. How in the world did you have the faith or the trust to step away from what you were doing into the unknown? I want to know how you thought it through, and how did it happen?
It took a lot of courage and inspiration from people in my life. I got to a place in my profession where I thought I should be feeling differently than I was, because I had reached this pinnacle, and I just felt like there was something else that I needed to be doing. I didn't feel that my life was all that purposeful, if I'm being honest. So I had at the time I had a very supportive husband who was able to, supported me on walking away from my profession, and I didn't know where it was going to go. I started with my writing and doing the hiking thing, but it did take a lot of, it was very scary. I had always been employed. I had had a job since I was 14 years old, and I used to work at an apple farm in Harwinton. And so I didn't know what it was like to not be employed by someone. So to be able to step out and not really knowing the direction I was going to take, and being able, and it opening up to what it did with the granola has been really a crazy experience, because it's opportunities that have just presented themselves, and I've just taken them.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. It always reminds me of that story, that movie Indiana Jones, where he's sitting there at the cavern and he wants to walk out, but he wants to get to the other side, but he doesn't see any way. And then he picks up the rocks or the sand and he throws it, and then he sees, what he needs to do. And I don't know if it's the universe, I don't know if it's God, but there's something to be said about, leaping out. I'm not talking about jumping off the Brooklyn Bridge on a dare. I'm talking about calculated risk and just believing, that you're going to get there okay, that things are going to be okay, and if it doesn't work out, you're going to learn something. You read my mind about the granola. How did you get involved with that, and what are you doing with that now? Where is that project?
Well, I was eating granola myself. I was always making granola. It's a great snack to take on the trail, and one of the things I did when I'd go to parties is I'd make granola and I'd pass it out to who was ever there. So it was really a group of my lady friends who really were like, Jill, you got to start selling this. This is great stuff. And I think they also too knew that I needed to get out with the people, and because I wasn't, I had left my job, but I was doing all this stuff and I was creating all this stuff, but I wasn't putting myself out in front of people. So the granola really gave me an opportunity. My first introduction to that was Woodbury Earth Day, and I had the granola, and I had my nature photography there, and just the connection I made that day with people was just, I was hooked. And I went home that day and I said, I have to do more of this. It's not it's so much not just the granola for me. It's the people that I meet when I'm out at these markets doing that, and the stories that I get to hear, and I have, some return customers that are just, I see them approaching my tent, and I just get this huge smile because I know that there's going to be something interesting that they're going to tell me or share with me, and it's just a really great feeling. I will still be doing my granola locally. I operate my granola under a cottage food license, so although I do sell online, it's for local delivery. And I'm not really sure if I'm going to expand more into a commercial kitchen with my granola, only because I don't want my time to be consumed by the culinary aspect of the granola. I really want to be able to pursue other things, especially my writing, and I don't want the granola. I don't want the granola to consume all of my time. So for the coming year, at least, I'm going to keep it at doing the farmers markets, and depending on how the COVID situation is, hopefully we'll have some more bigger events that will take place this year that you'll see me at. And I'd like to, bring out more of my other products as well, which I wasn't able to do this year because I was limited to what I could sell at farmers markets, which was just the granola.
Right. I notice you have the prints and you have the frames and you have the T-shirts. I mean, when I look at this, I look at a spiritual entrepreneur. That's what this says. This is what it screams to me. That's who you are. Am I right?
I don't really like to put a label on what I do because I want to be able to be expansive if I want to. But, yeah, I would say that if that's what it is, that's a pretty good description.
Yeah, and I understand about not wanting a label, but you realize that if you don't label yourself, other people are going to label. They just need to be able to put you in a container so they go, oh, that's Jill. She's average. But she's really not. Look what she's done. It's extraordinary.
Yes. And I do, one of the things I plan to do this year is to simplify. Right now I do have two websites. I have a separate website for the granola, which I realize now was just kind of complicated things. So I'm going to be condensing the two websites into one, and as well as my social media pages. So I'm going to be doing some simplifying this year so that I can better focus on bringing it all together under one perspective.
Now, are you doing this yourself? Are you outsourcing this? Are you working in WordPress? How are you getting all of this? Are you into this technical kind of thing?
I'm not. I'm so technically advanced. I use Curtis Lavoie Design as my web designer, and he does a great job working with me, taking my ideas and putting them on the website. So he's been great to work with. But other than that, every else that I do is I'm the one-man show.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that you said about connecting with people, I do lectures. This year I haven't done many lectures because of COVID, but I really believe that's business. I don't care if it's the T-shirts, the granola, or it's the guided tours, or whatever anybody's doing. It doesn't matter what they're doing. I really believe that business is an extension of a person, right? And it's kind of like a spiritual endeavor. You go into speaking or you go into, guided tours or whatever you're doing, and you realize, and this is what I've learned after 50 years of, not 50 years, maybe 20 years of thinking about this, is it really truly is about the connections we make with people. Because I think of my business successes and the people that I've worked with over the years and still work with, like my friend Peter Mingles that hosts this for me. I've known this guy for 20 years. And the guy that does my tours, George Corey, that does the Bethlehem tours. These people are like family to me. And I think, okay, you go out, you want to make the money, or you want to do something, or you're not really aggressive type A and you want to make something happen. But I think it's the people and the connections that you make. It kind of reminds me, and I know it's a little sappy of me to say this, but it kind of reminds me of that movie, It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes, it does. And I say on my website, on my granola website, that it was one of the reasons why I want to keep things small in hometown, because it's not about growing into this big granola company. It's about keeping it local and serving the people in my community. and because that's really where my heart is.
Right. Are you ever thinking of writing a book, like, going on trails with Jill and writing about your stories of changes? Are you doing that?
I'm trying to compile something now. I have a few ideas. I have so much writing that's I really just need to compile and put together. So that is something that I'm hoping for, that I'm in the works with on a few different projects now.
Excellent. Are you going to self-publish, or are you going to look for a literary artist or an agent, or what are you going to do?
I'm not there yet, Greg. I'll figure it out. Like with everything else I'll do, I'll figure it out as I go along.
I love it. And see, this is the philosophy. See, what you just said is brilliant, because you know what I think? I think a lot of people go, well, I can't figure it out, so I'm not going to do it.
Well, it can be intimidating if you start to think out too. I had somebody just yesterday that was saying how much work must have went into doing just the packaging and getting the granola to where it is. And I just took it one step at a time, and I went into it with, ignorant bliss. And it just kind of, before I knew it, I had this packaging and I had this product. And, I would say that to anybody who wants to get started in something. Don't look too far ahead. Just take the first step, and that'll lead you to the next one.
It's funny that you said that. I was watching a video the other day. A guy used to work for National Geographic. Don't know his name. Anyway, to make a long story short, they would send him on a journey, an adventure. Go to this country, and he goes, I don't know. I don't know what to do. And he just got there, and he says, here's the thing. When you're going, you can't have it too sharpened, your focus. You have to allow it just to come to you. You take the first step, and then you get there, and you just sit and you figure out why you're there, and it just kind of comes to you. It's almost, yeah. I hate to see this, it's like magic. It really is like magic.
Yes. Yeah, and it allows you to see those opportunities, because it's, not every opportunity might look like what you're looking for. So to just kind of go in without a set plan will help you see those opportunities that you may not have thought of.
Yeah, it reminds me of Joseph Campbell. He talks about living your bliss. It sounds like you are. What would you say to people to encourage them to do the same thing?
Just take the leap. Just take the leap. Just do it. Just do it. Things will line up. You can't, when you're contemplating making a change, you tend to always focus on all the bad that's going to happen, or what you're going to be taking out of your life. But you can't even imagine the opportunities that will open once you take that step and you start living a life that's true to how you want to live it. You can't imagine what's going to open because you've never been there before.
Yeah, you remind me of Kyle Cease. I met the guy a couple years ago up in Massachusetts, and he says when you walk away or you do something scary or you leave a job or a relationship, you're only focused on what you're going to lose and you can't see. So we got a minute left. How do people get a hold of you?
Come to my website, anaveragejill.com, or they can come down to the Litchfield Farmers Market every other week through the rest of the season. Or they can connect with me on Facebook or Instagram at anaveragejill.
And you also have YouTube too. We didn't talk about that. They can follow you on YouTube.
I do hiking with an average Jill on YouTube, but through my website there's a link to that as well.
Okay. And do you have a lot of subscribers, or you don't think about those numbers?
I try not to. Last I looked, I made it over the 100 mark, but I can't tell you the exact number that is.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking of buying 1 million subscribers. I'm kind of on the fence. Just kidding. All right, Jill Roberts, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. She talks about being an average Jill, but there's no way. All right, thank you so much, Jill. I really appreciate it. Keep in touch.
All right.
Guys, I know we give you something to think about. We're out. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks, everybody. Bye, Jill.
Bye, Greg.
You've been listening to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show, brought to you by motivational speaker Greg Dwyer on buildingfortunesradio.com. Check out Greg at GregDwyer.